This is the I'm Possible Project show, where we interview real people who have achieved incredible feats in the face of overwhelming odds, showing that impossible is just a state of mind and that anything is possible. I'm your host, Joshua Rivedal. Today, in episode 23, From Ship to Shape, I talk to Walker Vreeland. Let's jump right in. Walker is an award-winning radio personality, writer, actor, singer, and voiceover artist. As a radio personality, he is best known for having hosted The Afternoon Show on 102.5 WBAZ on Long Island and the podcast Interview with the Artist. His autobiographical monologue From Ship to Shape will make its New York premiere this fall at the United Solo Theater Festival. Walker and I have a lot of mutual friends as well, which is really exciting. Well, not really, but it's exciting to have you on the show. How about that? Thanks for coming on today, Walker. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josh. It's great to be here. I'm thrilled.
Same here, man. I'm glad we get to do this. Now, that little bio, that was nice and neat and tidy and cool, but I know you're way more than that. You're more than the guy from WBAZ and Ship to Shape, which I'm excited to hear more about. But if you would, please, would you tell us a little bit more about your life, a little background, where you've been, where you're going, the Walker Vreeland experience?
Oh, boy. Yeah, my real bio is a whole lot messier. So I was born in New York City, and I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and Long Island as well. And I always knew what I wanted to do from a young age. I started acting when I was about 11, mostly doing musical theater. So I went to an amazing school for the arts in Boston, outside of Boston, called Walnut Hill School for the Arts. And that was an incredible experience. And then I went to Tisch School of the Arts at NYU and worked as an actor and singer, and didn't work as an actor and singer for, I would say, the first 5 or 6 years out of school. And then when I was 25, I had a breakdown, which is something, obviously, that we'll come back to. But it was a definite turning point in my life. And I left the business and I went into broadcasting, radio specifically, something that I had always wanted to do. I'd always had a fascination for radio, or fascination with radio, and a love for it. And so I ended up moving to Long Island to host a morning radio show. And I ended up on that station for 10 years, which is much longer than I ever thought that I'd do it, and much longer than I ever thought that I would live on Long Island and away from New York City. But it was a real, the whole experience taught me a lot about myself and a lot about just what it meant to be an adult, what it means to be an adult. I discovered while I was on the air this passion for interviewing, specifically interviewing artists. And I made the decision that, that's what I really wanted to focus on. And over time, I learned a new skill set, which was amazing. Because, I think so many actors, maybe you can relate to this, so many actors feel like this is all I can do. I'm not qualified to do anything else. So what else can I do? So it was kind of it was refreshing to learn a new skill set, and really, and interviewing, I believe, is really an art form, a beautiful art form. So I focused on that specifically, and over time gained a following as a radio personality and celebrity interviewer. And, the way the radio years fits into the larger context of my life. Over time, I gained a following as a radio personality and celebrity interviewer. The way that the radio experience fits into the larger context of my life is that it allowed me to discover my voice for the very first time. And when you work in radio, one of the first things you learn is that you have to have a very clear, high definition persona, and you have to know who you are. And another way to say that is you have to have a clear, strong point of view and know what your likes are and your dislikes are. So in the process of finding my voice, I really found myself, and for the first time in my life, began to find some steady ground under my feet, which had never been there before. So it was a part of my healing from this breakdown that I went through in my 20s. As young actors, we're thrown into this crazy business, and we're expected to know at 21 years old who we are. And I think that's crazy. We're expected to know who we are and what we're selling and the work that we want to do. I had no idea who I was or what my brand was. I mean, I was 21. Who the hell knows any of that at 21? Maybe some people do, but not me. I was barely stable enough to get to the audition. You know, just that was an accomplishment. I was a fucking mess. And so taking a step back from the business and going in this other direction where I was forced to sit behind a microphone every day for 5 hours a day and host a live show, it forced me to get really clear about who I was, not just as a persona, but as a person. Who was I? What did I like? What did I not like? So that happened. And then just to bring you up to the present day, just to bring you up to now, I was on the air for 10 years on Long Island. And then in May of 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with bile duct cancer, which is an extremely rare form of cancer. And I was told that the only treatment was to have 3/4 of my liver removed. And this precipitated another turning point in my life. I was, as you can imagine, terrified because I knew that this was going to be a really big surgery with no guarantees. And they tell you, you know, this percentage of people don't survive the surgery. So it was a small percentage, but still, I had to make my peace. You know, I knew that there was a chance I might not be back. So that changed my life in a whole other series of ways. And obviously, I survived. I'm here, and I'm now cancer-free, which is just the most incredible miracle I could ever imagine. But that experience pushed me back to New York. So, you know, this mental breakdown pushed me out of New York and in this other direction, both literally and figuratively. And then 10 years later, I get diagnosed with cancer. I have my liver ripped out of my body. I have like this incision. I'm cut open, literally cut open from my sternum down to my lower abdomen. And I survive it. And I realize I have to go back to New York, which was something I knew I needed to do because the last few years knew that I had to get back to myself in some way. Not that I wanted to leave radio forever, but I had to really eventually get real with myself and admit to myself that at the end of the day, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, you know, like it or not. I can try and deny it. I can try and run from it and say, well, you know, I'm going to only do this and I'm going to, but I had to stop bullshitting myself and admit that this is the essence of me. And I had been delaying for all the usual reasons, mostly fear, because that's how it is. And as is often the case with any kind of life crisis, I think, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, Josh, that with any kind of life crisis, it propels you forward and it puts things into perspective, as cliche as that sounds, and it forces you to do the shit that you know you need to do. So I knew I had to go back to New York. I had been putting it off, and finally I survived the surgery, and I realized, what am I waiting for? I could be dead. Like, what fear? Like, please, fear of what? Fear of failing? Who gives a shit? I'm not dead. So, and that was amazing. It was just so freeing and so empowering. I felt so free for the first time in my life. I didn't care whether it was a smart move to quit my job, this wonderful job that I had on the air and this huge audience that I had built on Long Island and all of this press that I was getting and all this kind of like weird half celebrity that you have, because you're not a real celebrity, because you're a radio celebrity. So it's not real celebrity. You're just a radio celebrity. And you're only known on Long Island. So you're a radio personality. You're only known on, so it was like, but that was very seductive, because I could say to myself, well, at least I'm known on Long Island to people who listen to the radio still, which is not many people, but hey, at least I have so I was hanging on to that. And, I just, it propelled me forward. And so I'm back in New York. And so I moved back about 6 months ago to step back into my life as an actor and singer and writer and voiceover artist. But it's, obviously it's different now. It's different now because I'm 38 instead of 25. I feel like I'm doing it on my own terms. I'm creating and producing my own work, which is in and of itself very empowering. So I'm in it, but I'm now in it with so much more self-awareness and self-knowledge and stability. So
I'm like excited and inspired and nervous, and like I'm kind of feeling some of these emotions with you, because some of this I've been through myself and some of this I haven't, but I'm just kind of on the sidelines cheering you on, like, oh my God, he's self-aware, he's doing his thing. We can't help but cheer for you with all that you've been through. My goodness. And that self-awareness, I'm gonna jump around a little bit, because there's just so many, and I wanted to listen to you without thinking of what to ask next, because that's a terrible listener if that's what I'm doing. So I wanted to listen to you with the intent of just hearing you, but now all these things are coming back. So we've lived some very similar lives as we kind of chatted about before I hit record. This thing at 25, which we'll come back to, this breakdown, I mean, that's kind of where I found that's kind of my breakdown. That's where my life took a left turn. My father took his life, and then I got into solo work, and you're into solo work right now. And this idea of coming back to and finding all these hats that you're good at, the hats that you wear, the writing, acting, producing, voiceover, all that stuff. And you're like, it sounds to me like you're putting them all together so that they all work together, as opposed to like maybe back in the day, each of them were doing their own thing and it wasn't efficient, and there was no way you could have really given all of them A+ work. I'm putting words in your mouth, but when there's a lack of self-awareness and direction, I mean, I feel the same way. If I had tackled acting, and I'm no longer, I guess I'm a working actor, but I'm not pursuing the industry. I'm doing what you're doing, but in a different way. But when I was pursuing acting, if I had the self-awareness and the business acumen and just the kindness and we're all in this together, and then the real sense of I'm a creator and a creative, that career would have done something completely different. So, and I'm excited for what that's going to look like for you. Now, this going backward a little bit, this breakdown at 25.
Yeah.
What precipitated that? What was that like? What was the experience? How did that come about? And why did it push you in another direction than the direction you were already going in?
Well, it was certainly nothing new, unfortunately, at the time. It was a culmination of many, many years of struggle. So mental illness was something that I had dealt with almost all of my life. So from about age 11, when I told my parents that, I came home from 5th grade and told my parents that I wanted to kill myself, and then went into intensive psychoanalysis from age 11 to 15, and got on the whole drug train and trying this antidepressant and that and this, and then this therapist and that therapist, and 4 times a week. And, it was all so intense. It was the world that I inhabited in a lot of ways. And that was, I guess, a product of me having grown up in a family where things were approached in a very logical way. In terms of illness, it was, I suppose, my parents they had that outlook. That was part of their worldview, that when you're sick, you go to the doctor. It's very black and white. So I wasn't seeing a social worker. I wasn't seeing a psychologist. I was seeing a Freudian psychoanalyst. And I was, you know what I mean? And I was lying on the couch at 12 years old, talking about my dreams and my mother and this and that. And that was the world that I was in. And then, which was just very bizarre. But that was the context of it. And I think that's important to know, because that's not true for everybody. Some people don't have that context. They don't have that framework. They don't have. Now, in a lot of ways, I was very, very lucky, because I had parents who heard me when I said I need help. I certainly was not pushed into any of it. I was the one who instigated or initiated the whole process. I went to my parents. I was a very precocious, I don't know how self-aware I was, but I was very precocious at 11 and 12. And I went to my parents and I said, I need to see somebody. You need to arrange for me to see somebody. And so they did. And they paid God knows how many thousands of dollars on therapy and analysis. And my God, and who knows how much that helped? Who knows what good that did? But it was all part of it. And so, growing up, I was just doing the best I could. We're all, I think, at any given time, only doing the best that we can do with what we're given and what we know and what our limitations are. And so, as a kid, I really wasn't. I was not a happy kid. I was anxious. I was depressed. I was confused. I was confused about a lot of things. I was confused about my sexuality. I was confused about why I was so unhappy. I was confused about, I was fixated on whether or not there was a God and trying to prove somehow, could I prove that there was a God? It was all these big existential questions that I was grappling with, wrestling with. And then, all of those lovely adjectives like, anxious, depressed, confused, angry, they all just followed me into adulthood, and the diagnoses followed me as well. And honestly, I did not think that they would let me go. When you lived a certain reality for 25 years, you just assume, it will always be like this, obviously. If this is the way it's been for 25 years, well, this will obviously be the way it is when I'm 35 and 45 and 55. And so how did that change? I'm still exploring that very question, but it culminated in this breakdown when I was 25. And it was the summer I had taken a job as a lead singer for a cruise ship, which is just ridiculous. But I got on this cruise ship, and it triggered the beginning of my ultimate downfall. So I did not last long on the ship. I got on the ship, and as soon as I did, I slipped into a major depression, just battling panic and anxiety daily. There were a few circumstantial issues with the job that were not making anything easier for me. And so I left after 2 weeks and returned to New York. And it was really that summer and fall that things began to spiral downward, out of control. And I think that, one of the many things that my show is about is that when you are in a downward spiral, the momentum is such that it's very, very hard to escape it, to pull yourself out of it. I think this is true with mental illness. I think it's true with drug addiction. I think it's true for a lot of different scenarios. But the only scenarios of pulling oneself out of a downward spiral is you either have to pull yourself out, or you have people close to you, family and friends, who can help pull you out. And of course, if you're helping to pull yourself out, it makes it easier for them to pull you out. But that's really it. Those are the only options. And so I boarded the ship. I got off the ship. I had this breakdown where, this is what my show is all about, the details of this breakdown and how it actually happened, the signposts along the way that were saying, okay, you're slipping into something serious here. You're heading downhill, and here there are specific red flags, they're signs, and often you may be able to see the signs or understand or acknowledge them intellectually, but that doesn't mean that you're going to stop and break the fall. You're in a free fall. And what did that look like? Well, I couldn't breathe. I was running through the streets of New York crying. I was calling my friends and leaving way too long, manic, epic voicemails on people's machines. One day I'd be, hypomanic and feeling like I had the world at my fingertips. And then the next day, I couldn't function. I couldn't get out of bed. Just to walk from the bed to the bathroom was a struggle. So I ended up being hospitalized, and that was something that I was in favor of because I was so scared at that point. I really was so frightened. I didn't know what else to do, so I almost wanted to give the controls to somebody else. I wanted to say, look, here, you take the controls of me because I'm not functioning. I'm not stable enough to make these decisions for myself. I'm going to put myself in a controlled situation where they're going to treat this acute whatever it is that's happening. And so I did. So I was institutionalized for not a very long time. It was like 7 days at Johns Hopkins Hospital. And the reason that I ended up there as opposed to a hospital in New York is because I grew up in Baltimore and my family had some connections with Johns Hopkins, and that happens to be one of the best hospitals and one of the best mental hospitals in the world. So that's the story. And then when I got out, I was standing on the street on the Lower East Side, like just on a lot of lithium, like on so much lithium, I felt like I was moving through water at the bottom of a swimming pool. And I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to go into broadcasting. I mean, what? Like, I had no idea what was happening. So I went to broadcasting school, which was great because it gave me some place to go during the day. It gave me some structure. But I didn't really know what was happening, until years later. And then one day I woke up and I was on Long Island and I had my own radio show. And like, oh my God, I am so mentally ill. What has happened? So anyway, that's the short or long answer, or that's the story of the breakdown. And it was really just an incredible experience now. I mean, having 10 years or no more, I guess, 12 years or so of distance from it, I'm able to see that I'm so grateful for the experience because it was actually writing the play, writing this autobiographical monologue was part of my healing because I took my broken heart, as Carrie Fisher used to say, and made it into art, and I had kept journals throughout the whole experience as a way to survive it. But then I went back years later and thought, wow, there's a story. There's a great story here. And thank God for the cruise ship, because without the cruise ship, there's no comedy. I kind of feel like if you put a cruise ship into any story, it automatically makes it funnier. Without the cruise ship, it's just a sob story of like, oh, I had a breakdown, but you put a cruise ship in there, instantly hilarious. So I was very grateful for it in retrospect, and grateful for the process because it allowed me to come to terms with what had happened to me. What happened to me and how did I survive? And, that's still a mystery. I don't know. But there are a few things that I do know. But there are, I think it was a combination of factors which allowed me to get well. And I'm still investigating that. What did happen to me? And how did I get through it? And that's what my show is about. Every single time I do my show, it's another investigation of those questions.
There's a lot there. I guess I'm a little curious about going back to your youth. Maybe this is a two-part question, but what was it? Was it really just teen angst, sort of identity issues? I mean, you said the sexuality piece, like sexual identity, or was there. And then you alluded to a few other things. So whatever you're willing to disclose or not disclose, that's fair. There's no rule saying you have to throw your whole heart on the table. So were you able to pinpoint it, in a sense, at that young age? And did anything from that young age, look parallel or congruent at 25? Did anything look the same? And if so, what was that? It might be a three-part question.
No, that's a great question. So I think that there were all of those, all of that teen angst, the identity issues, existential issues, these big existential questions I was grappling with. I think that's all pretty normal. What wasn't normal was wanting to die. It wasn't as though I was planning suicide, but it's that I always felt out of control. I always felt like I can't handle this. I feel too much. I feel so much that I'm having trouble functioning. So if I had to pinpoint it, that's what and you could call that, I suppose you can call that clinical depression, or you can call that an anxiety disorder. I had no idea what was happening. I just knew that I was really unhappy. Now, when I was 25, I felt like all of the identity issues had resolved in terms of like figuring out my place in the universe. All that had sort of settled down, and I felt like I'd come to some conclusions. But I still felt very fragile, and I still felt very unstable. And the way that, to be even more specific, well, what does that mean? Well, what does that feel like? It feels, you know what it feels like? It feels like being scared all the time. It felt like being scared all the time, and it felt like, you know, that feeling, if you've ever taken an international flight and you get off and you're super jet lagged and you don't know what time it is or what time of day it is or what time your body clock is, and everything just seems really, really bright. That's one way to describe it. And another way to describe it, which I talk about in my show, is I'd have these moments where I could only just hear like silence, and so if silence had a sound and you could turn it up to its maximum volume, that's the only way I could describe it. It's like this white noise, like a static, both visually and audibly. Like I sometimes try to put into words, put depression into words, and that's the only way I can. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm just I'm spitballing here.
No, it's great. It's great. It actually brings up something else, but just commenting on that real quick. My depression, because I live with depression, and mine looks a little different than other people's. Although I met somebody recently who experienced similar symptoms, and when I go through episodes, they're like really long and drawn out. And so it's like nothing super pronounced, but it just feels like a nagging little headache behind your eye, if you can kind of call it that. Mm-hmm. And then in the throes of the darkest parts, you know, my thoughts just spiral very, very quickly. So just interesting. I just think it's just for our listeners and for anyone out there experiencing depression, yours might not look like mine or Walker's, but that doesn't mean it's any less valid. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to light. You as an 11-year-old, you as a 25-year-old, and anywhere in between. I'm curious about, this is a bit deeper of a question, maybe crossing into existential territory, but was there any clear sense of purpose to your life? Like, I'm going to do this. Purpose in the sense, like, not purpose like I'm going to be an actor and grow up and become famous, or I'm 25 and now I'm going to use this cruise ship to launch into a special on Saturday nights at, you know, Cleopatra's Needle and blah, 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 whatever, right? I mean, more or less like I'm using my art and I'm using myself for the benefit of the world in one way, shape, or form. Like, there's a sense of giving back, like that kind of a sense of purpose. Like, that's kind of like, was there any sort of thought process behind that?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because no. There wasn't at all. I was just going, in a way, you know, in some sense, as a young person, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, I was very focused, because I always knew I always felt like I knew where I was going. But in another sense, I had no idea. Like I said before, you know, when we are young and we're flung into the business part of it, you know, we get training, or we go to acting school, or whatever it is, you get that all of a sudden you have to deal with this business, and you have to deal with, well, what is my brand? And what do I want to do, and who I am? Like, all of those questions are really getting at something much deeper, which is, I think, what you're talking about, which is, who am I, and what do I care about, and what is the larger vision here? Why am I doing this, and what do I really want to achieve? Obviously, I'm in this field because I want to connect with people. But how do I want to connect with people? In what way? What do I want to say? What's my message? Who do I want to talk to? Who is my audience? Like, I think that all of those questions are underneath that. Those sort of superficial, like, what's my type? What's my brand? And being able to articulate that. I had no fucking clue. And all I knew, so what that looked like at 25, at 23 or whatever, is me like having an agent who was sending me on Guys and Dolls auditions. I had no business doing Guys and Dolls. I don't want to do Guys and Dolls. I was not only not a leading man, but like, even if I was a character actor and being said, that's not me. That's not what I love. Musical theater. Of course, I spent my life studying musical theater, but I don't want to do that. Like, it's just not interesting to me. And here's, but I couldn't say, I didn't even know that it was okay to say to my agent, this is not really what I want to be doing. So anyway, to get to your question, which is about something much bigger, that didn't happen. That kind of epiphany of like, oh, this is about a much bigger vision. Didn't happen until I started writing my play. And I realized not only did it help me heal, like I said before, but it also, it allowed me to connect with other people. So as a radio personality, my story of suffering and recovery became part of my backstory. My story and my stories became part of my character. In other words, I didn't leave it out and only present the happy, eccentric, funny parts of me. And ironically, the more I opened up about it on the air with my listeners, the less tragic it became. I mean, my mental illness became something I was very honest about, but also something I joked about constantly and refused to be so serious about. Now, simultaneously, I was on the radio and I started writing this monologue about my breakdown, and it really allowed me to see that, like, oh, this is not just about me getting my play produced. This is about something that I happen to be very passionate about because it's real for me and it's real for a lot of people, this whole issue of mental illness that is so stigmatized. So I started to feel like this is really important, not just for the superficial performer or artist side, but this is important because I want to heal the world. And it just sounds like, I don't know, maybe it sounds naive, but I thought, like, maybe I can't heal the whole world, but I'm going to do my part with this piece to heal the world and to chip away at the stigma, or as I say, upstage the stigma. And, by telling my story of survival, I was very clear about what I wanted to achieve. I want to humanize mental illness. I want to normalize mental illness. And I want to give myself permission, and I want to give other people permission to face and laugh at and ultimately love their most disastrous, shameful chapters of their lives. Because it's often seen that way. And, so most people are not willing to talk about this shit. So let it be me, Carrie Fisher's gone now. It's like Carrie Fisher is now gone. Who do we have left? Like, it's just you and me, Josh. We have to, like,
the big mantle, dude.
We have to carry the torch. I know there are other people out there that are open about their mental illness and addiction and whatever it is, whatever the demon is. But, it's up to us.
It really is. And it's so funny. I thought, what I thought we were going to talk? I thought we were going to talk about cancer today, and we're talking about mental illness, and either one would have been great. But, like, the perspective that you bring to the table on this is really great.
Thank you. Well, cancer's great too. I mean, there's a lot of
it's lovely.
Stuff. There's a lot of good. It's very loaded, and there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. But whatever.
I'm cool, man. I was just being honest, and I don't know. I just wanted to say that. Didn't really need to be said on the air, but here we are. But we're gonna move back towards center stage for a second, and just the fact that just all the different perspective. I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna kind of, it's self-deprecating humor, right? About the making fun of the mental illness, which I think is so appropriate and so okay and so needed, because it is usually like the storm clouds and the rain and that dark TSA with that one violin that just won't shut the hell up, and it's like, come on, can we do something different, please? Can we tell a joke? I mean, I know, like,
exactly,
shit is hard, but we can, like, move through this. Like, come on, this is why nobody's talking about it, because everyone's like, well, if I talk about it, I'm just going to be seen as a pariah or, like, the worst person at the party or whatever.
Right.
Back to purpose real quick. There was, I find that in the aftermath, like before and after a major trauma or traumatic event of one's own self, like a mental breakdown, a crisis of something, like I can't say like some kind of assault, because I've got no business saying that. So I'll say of oneself, right? Of this kind of a thing. When I feel like when one finds purpose and is very intentional on that, it changes the game, and it makes it, it insulates from another breakdown, and or it insulates from it being as painful of a breakdown as hitting the ground or hitting the bottom of that dark pit. It's a little more shallow the next time if you go there. And I just love where your art meets advocacy meets really wanting to change the world and help people. And I would imagine, now sounds a little bit like you're somewhat fresh on this particular leg of this journey that you're on called life, where, you started writing this show and it gave you this new perspective of, I need to share this not just for fame and fortune, but for the benefit of humanity so that they can realize that they're not the only asshole dealing with such and such an issue, which is what I thought for a long time, right? So just this idea of purpose, I think it's so important. I guess I'm just making a comment for a minute, but I find that in psychotherapy and in a lot of public presentations that I witness, I'm usually the presenter, but when I see presentations, there's a lack of talk about spirituality, not in the religious sense, but more in the sense of finding purpose and connecting to the world around you. And keeping your feet grounded, because I think it crosses into this territory where people are afraid of talking about the religiosity component, which could be. That's not for me, because I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but I do semantically speak similar languages as people who are very, very religious. But I think it's to the field and to people's detriment not to have that conversation, even though it may be uncomfortable, because the more I talk to people like you, the more I find and the more I realize, and the more I connect to my own experience, that one of the biggest things that we've got to do for young people and for people of all ages to help them find their purpose in one way, shape, or form, because that's what's going to keep us grounded, and that's how we're going to interlock and be in lockstep of, okay, we can feed and change the world, and we can make this place better, even if we don't all agree. At least we know what our purpose is. At least we have some meaning to our life. Even if we're not dealing with a mental illness, at least we're not miserable. At least we know what we're doing. So I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited to see where this solo show journey is going to take you.
I think what you're getting at, this whole conversation about purpose and meaning, it runs deep, or it runs as deep as you want it to run. Because it gets at, well, why am I here? And that's innately a spiritual question, and what's going to be my legacy when I'm no longer on the planet? And that became especially real for me over the past year, having gone through this whole cancer experience. So, not only did making art from the trauma become the richest and most fruitful source for creativity and connecting with others, but it allowed me to own this part of me even more, and to see the sensitivity and the fragility that makes me predisposed to mental illness as an asset, and as that's where the gold is. It's where all the pain and suffering is, but that's also where the gold is. And that's given me more confidence. I think you touched on this also, this whole, how it's how wellness is self-fulfilling. That's therefore given me more confidence to turn it into art, which has made me less mentally ill. So do you know what I mean? Do you see how wellness can be self-fulfilling, and how illness or disease can also be self-fulfilling? It's both on both sides of the spectrum. So anyway, I just wanted to comment on to respond to that.
No, that's great. That's great. It's all relevant. It's all important, and it can be fulfilling. And I know that when I was coming out of a deep, dark, suicidal period in 2011, early 2011, as soon as I started helping people, that brought about wellness. That brought about I would say that almost helped me more than it helped the people who I was reaching, who I know their lives saved. So I guess I'm reflecting on that in agreement with you, but also as sort of just a little bit of excitement underneath, because I see this is a direction where you're going with your life and your work. So I want to switch gears a little bit. You talked about some fun, talked about being human and kind of just being cool. So I want to switch gears and have you take part in our quick fire round. And this is very much, you're going to get this reference, this is very much our Inside the Actor Studio moment. So I'm going to be James Lipton. No, I'll be Josh, and you be Walker.
I love it.
And no right or wrong answers, just some fun so people see a different side of you.
Okay, great.
So Walker.
Okay.
Yeah, man, this will be funky. What is your favorite word?
Essence.
Essence.
Is that so cheesy? That's so cheesy, isn't it? That's one of them.
Okay. Is that your favorite magazine, too?
Absolutely.
All right. Glad you know that about you, too. So, Walker, what is your least favorite word?
Victim.
Yeah. I don't like that word either.
Yeah. It just sounds victim. It just sounds as yucky as it is.
I'm a survivor of blank as opposed to victim.
Right.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
There's a difference.
Okay, this is one of my favorites. So if somebody made a movie of your life, Walker, see, we'd put this on. Let's make this an Amazon special. So Amazon Prime. So if somebody makes a movie of your life, Amazon Prime, who would play the title role?
I'm trying to think of I don't have a lot of hair at the moment, so I'm trying to think of what actors. No, I guess they could play younger versions.
Bruce Willis.
Save their head. So I don't know, a Mark Ruffalo maybe. I love him. Maybe Jake Gyllenhaal or I don't know. I'm trying to think of
on a smaller scale, like an NPH, little Neil Patrick, because he's a showman.
Yeah, for sure.
Or if Bruce Willis and and if Bruce Willis and Neil Patrick Harris decided to make babies together and go for the old spindle, we'd have a Walker Vreeland. Olive was challenged, but can sing and dance his ass off.
well, I'm not sure about the dancing. I don't know. Is that one of the questions? What are you terrible at?
Why
dancing.
not? Now we know. Dancing. We're on the same page with that, man. I was a triple threat.
Go ahead.
But my third threat was smiling and not dancing. Smile big.
Right.
So
no.
People are distracted from how bad you are.
I am right there with you. Well, that was one of the problems with Stupid Cruise Ship. I got on, I was hired as a singer, and then it turned out that they expected me to have lead dance skills, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I can't do a tour on layer. Fuck this. I'm out of here.
Pot of beret. The hell is a pot of beret? Yeah. So, all right, two more. So, Walker, who or what is your spirit animal?
Elephant. Yeah.
You peanut lover?
I had a dream once that, I had a dream. It came from a dream, actually, from 5 or 6 years ago, that I was in some sort of a lake in the middle of the night in North Carolina or something. I have no idea where this came from, but I was floundering in a lake, and it was pitch black. I didn't know where I was, and all of a sudden I felt this thing come up under me, this enormous surface. And it kept coming up and up and up, and all of a sudden I was on an elephant. And then I rode this elephant. This elephant swam me all over this lake. And ever since then I thought, oh, well, that's an elephant coming to me in my dreams. That is my spirit animal, apparently. It must be.
I think so. It sounds like you have a very mystical, and spiritual connection. So we'll keep that rolling. Yeah, I like that. So, Walker, if heaven exists, if it exists, what would you like to hear God say to you as you enter, perhaps on that elephant, or as you get kicked out?
I hate you. God hates you. I'm just joking. I mean, I guess, at the end of the day, you want to feel like you did it. You did it, You did it. You did it.
You did it. Yay, God. Right? You were special after all.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, you were not a failure.
Could have been worse. Can you imagine?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, man. So that's the end of our quickfire round. Walker, what does the next maybe 6 months to a year hold for you professionally, personally, whatever you want to share? I know you got the show in the work, so whatever you want to share.
So the show is the show's my focus right now. So, I'd like to take it as far as it can go. Again, it opens, the New York premiere is happening this fall, on September 30th. And then, I hope that, and it's going to be just a limited run, but I'd certainly like something more extensive than a limited run in New York. So, and I'd love to tour with it. I really do. I really look forward to that. I've already done some touring with it, and I have a few dates lined up for this winter. But I really do look forward to just reaching more people in different parts of the world, because I did the show back in May on Long Island specifically it was a conference. It was a mental health awareness conference, and every mentally ill person within a 30-mile radius of that theater was in that audience. And it was one of the most moving experiences of my life. Meeting every single person after the show was just, it was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And
that sounds special.
Yeah, I just want more. I want more connection like that. And yeah, it just reminded me like why I'm doing it, and it made me feel part of the fabric of everything. I know that's such a vague thing to say, but so that's you asked what's this next 6 months. I hope what the next 6 months holds. That and then after that, who knows? I have no idea.
That's okay. I think somehow I think your life is going to be full, very, very full with this show and all the offshoots that are going to come with that. So very excited for you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, super duper. And if folks want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn about the show, if they want to learn about you, get in touch, say hello, connect on some level, what is the best way or a couple ways that folks can get in touch with you?
Well, my cell phone number is, I'm just joking. So I will give you the website is fromshiptoshape.com, or you can email me. I mean, there's a contact form on the website, or you can just email me directly. My email address is wvreeland@gmail.com. So WV as in victory, REELAND @gmail.com. So shoot me an email. If you have my number already, just call me and say hi. And there's the website, and you can just come visit me in the Bronx.
Okay. Super, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to encourage people to get in touch with you because I think you got such a great message, and you know, I've just enjoyed our conversation, man. It's just been really great. So.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't remember the last time I've had this much fun doing an interview.
You've been listening to the I'm Possible Project show with Joshua Rivedal and guest Walker Vreeland. I love sharing stories and how to turn impossible into I'm possible. If you want more inspirational stories, our second and third books are in pre-order right now. Changing Minds, Breaking Stigma, Achieving the Impossible, as well as Lemonade Stand. Both contain powerful stories of overcoming tremendous odds. When life gives you lemons, squeeze, add sugar, and pick up a copy of The I'm Possible Project. www.IamPossibleProject.com/pre-order. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're more than a community. You're part of the I'm Possible family. Until next time, sending you lots of love.